And now, for your listening pleasure, here's Polizzi and Rose, covering the week of media, marketing, and digital content news. This Old Marketing. Take it away, boys.
Hello, my friends. This is Robert Rose, and welcome to a special episode number 322 of This Old Marketing, the content creator episode to celebrate, well, CEX. That's right, for Thursday, April 28th, because both of us will be in Phoenix at the CEX event when this airs. And with me, as always, is my good friend, my colleague, and the guy who's getting all the CEX, Mr. Joe Polizzi. See what I
caught
did there?
me by surprise on that one. That was pretty good.
There you go. That's the way we roll.
It seems like it's always my fault with these special episodes. Like when you travel, like you always work around your schedule. And when I have something going on, even though we're both doing this one, this one's sort of my fault. It always just seems to be, Joe's got something going on, so we got to do another special episode.
Welcome to the story of my life. I mean, this is. I live my life around the schedule of Joe Polizzi. I live my life at the pleasure of Joe Polizzi. Really, if we think about it.
Well, I mean, it's good to define your role. And
That's right.
I think you've done
played.
that very well.
I think I have.
No,
I think I have defined my role.
I really appreciate it. No, we're recording this, and we just recorded the last one, but we're recording this, 3 days before Creator Economy Expo. I already know of a lot of people that are already on their way to Phoenix. I'll be leaving in about 24 hours from now to get on a plane and do all the...
Oh, you're going to spend the whole weekend.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people... Look at... Robert, I'm going to tell you something about events. I don't know if you know this, but you can't just show up. Like, I can't show up Monday morning and then it just all unfolds. I have to be there because, I'm the one that handles all the details.
Yes, that's correct. That's absolute. For all of you who just listened out there, that is the most bullshit thing that you've ever heard. Yeah. I know you're the details guy. Yeah, you're absolutely the details guy. But I know that you do have to be there because all those people, they love you.
Well, no,
they're waiting
I don't know
for
about
you
that.
to get there.
The
people who do handle the details.
I'm hosting this year, so I'm saying it like we've had it before. This is the first year for Creator Economy Expo, so I'm going to host it. I'm going to do most of the intros, and we've got some fireside chats, and I'm actually doing 2 presentations myself. We'll talk about some of those as we go, but I'm really excited. I got to tell you, I was a little bit worried that we weren't going to get to where we needed to get, but we're definitely well over the 300 mark at this point. We got some amazing sponsors. HubSpot was great. It's funny. We talked about this, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago. I used to rail on HubSpot all the time because this is back 10 years ago, right?
That's right.
When we first started the podcast.
Before they started writing you checks. Yeah, back before they stopped writing checks.
But I'll tell you what, my opinion has definitely changed of them.
I'm sure it has. I'm sure it has.
So supportive. Yeah. No, they're really going all in on this podcast network thing. They're doing a whole contest at CEX where you can pitch your idea for a podcast, and if they like it, they'll fund it.
That's a great idea.
Isn't that something?
That's a fun idea.
It's really fun. So I'm totally
like a Shark Tank kind of thing.
Exactly. So you're going to be there. People can send them in ahead of time, but you can be there. They're going to take your video, do your little 60-second pitch, and you'll be there. And there's a lot of other, of course, amazing sponsors. You and I will be there for Rally Creator Day, so we both have our own creator coins, and we'll be learning from other creators and listening to case studies and how they're.
By the way, I have a launch date for mine. So I haven't even told you this yet.
I don't know.
I have a launch date. Yeah. So June 1st is going to be the D-Day for my little thing, which I will tell more about on.
So that's where the plan
of This Old Marketing,
the plan and everything will come alive. We'll know what it is.
That's right. That's right. There will actually be a landing page up as at CEX, which I can actually say now because by the time this hits the air, it'll be there. It's experienceadvisors.io. and you can go check it out and just read about it. But June 1st will be the official launch day.
Congratulations. That is very
it'll be
exciting.
fun. Well, don't congratulate me yet because it's not done yet, but it's just like it's getting close.
So you're going to let us know the idea behind Idea Coin?
I will. That's right. Yeah.
Wow.
There you go.
There's something there.
It's a fun thing.
Excited.
It's a real fun thing. Yeah.
So since we're, leading into Creator Economy Expo, I think you and I thought we would talk a little bit about the anatomy of a content creator, and seems right.
Including us,
seems like the right decision.
Yeah, including us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we'll share some of our experiences, but did you want me to kick off with some of the research?
Well, what
what do you want to do?
Well, that's what I want to do, is because, and this, by the way, speaks directly to my presentation at CEX, which is, the most important thing if you're going to make a business out of content creation. And one of the things that I love so much about what you launched here is that you call these folks content entrepreneurs, because it is about the business of doing this. And it's knowing your audience. And I think the research, it's a great place for us to start this, because the research of what is happening today in the content creator economy is really important and surprising, I think. I think a lot of things that you would have assumed are not true, and a lot of things that you may not have thought about are true, and it's really interesting. So that's a great place for us to start. So share some of the research and what you're going to be talking about in the opening keynote there.
Absolutely, happy to. So this is our second year doing our research behind what makes up a content entrepreneur. Everyone, I don't know if you've seen some of the research lately, but Linktree came out with a stat, and they said there's 200 million content creators, whatever those mean to them, and Signal Fire before that was 50 million. So whatever, we've got 25 million, 50 million, 200 million, whatever. We got a lot of people that want to look at content creation as a full-time business. But your point is so critical. There's an end to this, right? There's a why behind it. I talked with Ann Hanley, who's going to do a great keynote at Creator Economy Expo, and she's doing her keynote about the why behind we do this in the first place. Not just, let's get more audience, or let's drive more revenue, but let's really talk about why you are doing this. You are in the business of content. You have a product, hopefully. We know so many people out there that are creating content. They've got podcasts. They want more listeners. They want more subscribers. But to what end? So that's really what we want to think about, is to what end. And the other thing, and I'll get to some of this amazing research that the team put together. My concern about the creator economy as a phrase, if you will, is because it's used by a lot of media companies out there. And when they talk about creator economy, the first thing they talk about is, here's what TikTok is doing. Here's what YouTube is doing. Here's what Patreon is doing. Here's what all these software companies are doing. But they don't talk about the core of what makes up the creator economy, and that's the creators. Those are the content entrepreneurs.
Right.
That's it. The creator economy would not exist if it weren't for businesses that are trying to actually become financially independent through generating consistent content and building an audience. And then from that audience, we drive, different forms of revenue as we go. And we'll talk about some of that. So I guess I was, you and I talked about the idea that, okay, we called this thing Creator Economy Expo, but part of me was like, I don't know if I want to do that, because are we feeding into them? Because I wanted to call it Content Entrepreneur or something. But that's actually, I think, part of my keynote that, this will be done by the time people listen to this, but I wanted to do a little play on the CEX, not in the gutter like you would do, but the CE, Creator Economy, and CE, Content Entrepreneur. And so that's
well, you could change the name at some point to Content Entrepreneur Experience.
Ooh.
And then the X is for experience. See what I did there? This is why you have me around. This is my role.
That's actually not a bad idea. That is,
yeah.
Because we could keep CEX, obviously. So you can
that's
go
right.
Many places.
Of course.
I might do that. We'll see where it goes.
Yeah.
So anyways, we interviewed in detail 1,000+ content creators, and I've got some key talking points. I'm still kind of working through my keynote, trying to figure out what's the most.
What a shock!
I know. I always
what a
wait.
shock!
I always wait till the last minute, but I'm good at this.
Yeah.
Because it about an hour beforehand, it really hits me, and I'm like, this is the key message. This is what I have to get across. So there's a couple things. First of all, you and I talked about this on the last episode about the time. So what we found out is full-time creators. So full-time creators, these are people that are doing this full-time. It's not a side hustle. This is not a side job. So they're creating content full-time as their career choice, if you will. And what we found out is full-time creators say it takes roughly 6.5 months to see their first dollar. And then another 10 months to fully support themselves as a business. So basically you're looking at 17, 18 months total from launch to supporting one person. So I think that's important for people listening to this to know.
Did you actually measure, because I actually have an anecdotal number for you, that because I've been doing a lot of coaching of content creators over the last year, so it's a small sample, in the, maybe in the 50 to 100 range. But there's the time from idea to launch too. Did you guys measure that?
I don't think we have that one. No, absolutely not. But
Yeah.
what did you find with that one?
I found that it's about 6 months. And one of the things that I found about that on the qualitative side was how frustrating it is for many of these content creators because, as people, we're not terribly good planners. We're not terribly good project managers. And we're not, especially when it comes to our own stuff, right? We may be a great manager at work, but then, our own side hustles or side projects or projects just generally we want to do, everything from cleaning out the closet to launching a content, platform. We're not very good at it. So what ends up happening is that instead of measuring twice and cutting once, we do a lot of thrash, right? Oh, we start down this platform and we get all of our logos updated and we get our first post up there and then we go, this isn't right. And then you start again and you start again. And there's a lot of starts and fits, I found. And it's about 6 months from the first idea to the launch idea. What I also found is that the first idea, and this is something that I've even experienced in launching my own new little thing, which we just talked about, is that the first idea is very rarely what launches. It is in many ways it's diametrically opposed to what launches. And so don't feel bad about that, right? If you're getting started in this kind of thing, don't feel bad about the idea that, that there's a lot of what feels like thrash in that first 6 months before you get to launch in dollar number one. Mm-hmm. And then, and then it'll change again. It's going to probably change again as you get into dollar number 5 and dollar number 100 and, and on to the 18 months that you just talked about.
That's a great point. It's, I referenced the other day, the Rolling Stone article on Mr. Beast, which is a great article for any content entrepreneur to read. And Mr. Beast says, what they asked him, what does it take to become a successful YouTuber? And he says, go make 100 horrible videos and then get to 101 and then you'll know.
Right.
It's like,
that's right.
And a lot of people don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear that you have to put in the time, which generally seems it's funny you say 6 months before getting started. In October 2020, I had the idea for the Tilt. We launched in April.
Yeah, there you go.
6 months. Almost right on the dime. So,
yeah.
So this,
and I can tell you that I was supposed to launch my little thing. I wanted to launch it at CEX. And that's just not going to happen. My original idea for my little thing that I want to launch is I had at Thanksgiving in November of last year. And based on no small input from you, who were like, what the hell are you doing? And why are you not doing this? So which completely ruined my Thanksgiving. But other than that, I thank you for it. But then, so November. So I was going to launch about 6 months later here at CEX, and it didn't happen. And so because of so much of what I just talked about, and so I said, I'm going to push it out till June 1st because that feels like a fun day. And June is also my birthday month. So it's like you gotta feel right. It's got to feel right to you. And there's a lot to be said for making sure that you're in this for the long game, right? You're not, if you're thinking that you're going to flip this thing in a week or overnight, you should go buy an NFT, right? You should just go buy an NFT and try and flip it, because building this thing is going to it's going to take time. You got to be passionate about it. You got to feel like doing it, whether or not you're making money. And then you can turn it into a business.
It's so true. So Claire McDermott, who we've worked with forever. So she runs Raven Research, and she put this whole thing together. She put together some key points from the research. And she says here, the first dollar arrives quickly, but independence takes time. So she goes on and she says, no matter what people say about the low barriers to entry for creators, which is great, right? There are almost no barriers for somebody to get into this business. She's saying that runway, and I love how she's calling it runway, may be the single biggest stumbling block. And she's all about shortening the runway. Like, how do we shorten that time to independence, which right now seems to be about a year and a half, which is what it is. And it's been there. I mean, when I wrote Content Inc. back in 2015, it was about a year and a half. We talked about 12 to 18 months when we did we did our interviews. We only interviewed like 20 or 30 people at the time. Now we're interviewing 1,000. And that just seems to be, the amount of time.
And it's really hard. It's really hard because it's very hard, especially these days, coming out of literally the last 2 years, it's so hard to picture ourselves 18 months from now, and especially if this is something that you're doing and by the way, this pertains just as much to a business launching a content marketing program as it does to someone launching their own individual content creator platform, which is, it's so hard to envision what you're all about 18 months from now and go, am I still, is what I'm going to be talking about still going to be relevant, in December 2023? And when I think about that, it's like, it's just a really hard thing to envision. What you need to remember is that right now, as we sit here in April of, and May of 2022, just think about the person that you were last year, at the beginning of last year. And it's not really all that different if you think about it. And so how are you going to use, because it just goes by so quickly, the time goes by so quickly that you just have to focus. And the more you can focus and the more you can invest in this thing, the faster it will go. Yep. But you've got to plan for the fact that because runway not only means how do you shorten the runway, but it's how do you lengthen the runway for the thing that's going to help supplement you until you can get your thing launched, right? Because until you can become independent, you've got to have another way to pay the rent. And that's so right. How are you paying the rent while you get your thing off the ground? And again, that applies to a content marketer as well. How are you going to deliver results as this blog or this resource center you want to launch also takes a year and a half to get going?
A lot of people know this story, but it's worth saying because we're talking about it right now. But if my wife and I didn't set up our living environment on the fewest amount of expenses possible, there would have been no Content Marketing Institute. It never would have happened.
Tito's was right at the top.
Tito's was, oh my God.
Right
Tito's,
that's number one.
Bringing back good memories or bad memories, depending on the day. But we launched the business in April 2007. And luckily, I knew it was going to take time. I didn't realize how long it was going to take because by September of 2009, so this is 2.5 years later, I still was not financially independent. I was basically doing any kind of speaking gig, consulting gig. You and I were working on some stuff. I had all sorts of ideas. And finally, we came up with the idea for Content Marketing Institute. And that launched in May of 2010. When that launched the first 30 days, we all felt this was going to be something. Like we hit it. Everyone was excited about it. We knew what we were doing. Then in September, later that year in September, we announced we were going to do Content Marketing World. We were hoping for 100 people. We ended up getting 600, and then the story goes from there. So really, 4 years it took. Now, it might sound like a long time, but then once you get to that point, it really moved fast, and revenue came much quicker than we anticipated. So, we were on Inc.'s, fastest growing 500 private companies for 4 years in a row or something like that. It was something crazy. Yeah. And we went from basically 0 to 10 million in revenue in about 4 years. And that's how it happens. And that's why last episode, when we were talking about Morning Brew, for 4 years, they were just working it out. They didn't even know if they had a business model there. Now, when you look at 2 years, 3 years later, I mean, they're a $50 million plus company. They're growing like crazy. Great exits for the founders. So the opportunity here for you is, yes, the barriers to entry are low, and you're not going to get it right the first time, but you have to set up your life so that you can make it, the 18 months, because right now we haven't figured out a way to lower that number.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that too, because I've literally spent the last week back in 2009 and 2010 and 2011, because for my presentation for CEX, which I'm so glad that you reviewed and know so well, that you know exactly what I'm going to talk about. No, it's fun that it'll be a surprise for you, because one of the things that I did was I got to go back in time and remember that when I left my job, after having dinner with you and sort of going all in with CMI in 2009, and we decided to write a book, and we were going to do all the things, and I was going to become a content creator for myself as well as for CMI, and go sort of all in on that. And in the meantime, I was still paying rent by being a consultant on email marketing and SEO and, all the stuff that I knew how to do, but wasn't terribly interested in doing much anymore of, doing advertising, media buys for small companies, working for agencies on various projects of building websites and, still doing HTML to some extent. And, I'm coming off a CMO job, and I'm now doing HTML and whatnot. So I'd constructed my life so that I could actually do the thing that I really wanted to do. And I knew it was going to take time for me to actually start generating revenue. I say all that because for me, it was almost 24 months. And one of my slides in the presentation that I'll give talks about 2011 when we announced the consulting group. Yep. I actually have a screenshot from the website, from CMI's website, from 2011, where we announced the new consulting group that will be headed by Robert Rose and blah, blah, blah. And it was this wonderful sort of pivot point for me, because from that point forward, that was my $1, right? And then it took a little more time to sort of become my living, but I became a content creator driven by the content that I was creating, and my revenue model was the consulting that I got out of it.
Consulting coaching,
yeah.
That was, by the way, man, I'm so nostalgic about those times. Because because you and I, a lot of people don't know this, but of course we met in Chicago at Scott Abel's content strategy event. But what was it? 6 months later, we started working.
No, you know whose event that was. You know whose event that was. It wasn't actually Scott Abel's event. He was one of the organizers of it. But it was what's his name? Steven. It was the Web 2.0 content. It was still
Web 2.0.
Steve,
yes, you're right. I'm sorry. You're absolutely right about
it's all right. No, Scott Abel was there, as were a number of content strategy people that we know and love. Christina Halverson was there, and Lisa Welshman was there, and there were so many sort of OG content people there at this event. But it was called Content 2.0 was the because it was taking advantage of the Web 2.0 sort of idea, which was so funny because everybody was all about social media, and we were talking about what Southwest Airlines was doing, and that was you and I had the exact same case study in our presentation, because I was talking about Southwest Airlines and the way they did things, and you were talking about Southwest Airlines and the way they did things, and we were like, hey, we're giving almost the same presentation here.
But I felt really out of place at that event, because most of the people that you were mentioning and everybody else there, they were hardcore content strategists, and I was not. I was coming from the marketing side, so it was. a lot of people don't realize this, but when you say content strategy and content marketing, there are two fiefdoms, completely separate. There's some people that cross both, but they are very, very separate. Maybe not as separate as they used to be.
Definitely not.
But
definitely
at the time, there was like, there were some people out there that said, do not.
It was
call
Game
me
of Thrones
content
time.
marketer.
Yeah, that's right. It was Game of Thrones time.
Oh,
yeah, it was definitely, the Baratheons versus the.
Well, I did a couple podcasts with Christina Halverson, who's definitely in the content strategy camp, and we did a content strategy versus content marketing, and then she wanted a big old fight, and I'm like, it's not a fight, we're on the same team. It's just different parts of the process.
And these days literally we're on the same team.
Exactly.
I mean, it is becoming much more, I've been hopeful that a lot of my work over the last 5 years have been around bringing together those ideas, and where content marketers need to pull in the skills of content strategy, and vice versa, by the way, because it's not all about, the governance and the metadata, but nor is it all about storytelling and platforms.
Yep.
So, all those kinds of things.
Let me go through some of these, and we can talk about our final
I got you completely off track with the whole.
We get distracted. We could talk about anything. It just depends on where we want to go. Okay. So we talked about the runway idea. From she's got in here, no unicorns, just workhorses, which is interesting. So I want to talk about execution here. So a lot of times what we found out is people think of content creators, they think of the Mr. Beasts, the PewDiePies, the Joe Rogans, the big unicorns that, get all the press. But what we found is successful creators who are financially independent, they're not the Mr. Beasts of the world. They don't have a huge idea. They're usually in a niche industry, and they just do the work on a consistent basis. And they don't want, at least they say they don't need a ton of money. They want enough that they don't have to worry about going to work with anybody else. And then it's all goes into execution, which is really boring, but absolutely true. The creators, the content entrepreneurs who are making a sustainable living, they absolutely treat it like a business. They love creating and sharing content, but they understand that it's just part of the job. And what we've also found out is passion sometimes is there, but passion is not necessary. You don't have to you don't have to create content about the thing that you're passionate about. And I think a lot of people think that that's, oh my God, I love sports collectibles, so I'm doing a podcast on sports collectibles. No, you don't have to. You can have expertise in other areas and create content.
You don't, but it helps. I would say it helps.
It helps.
But it's not a prerequisite, but it definitely helps. Look, I learned this 20 years ago when I was in the content management business, because we sold content management systems to every kind of company that you can imagine. And, from everything from financial services to cool, Adidas to, cool social media networks to, anything you can think of, we were selling content management services into. And we had a saying, which was, don't get close to the content, because it's really hard on the, if you're working in that business, if you're not interested in the topic, like if you're completely disinterested, it's much harder to get motivated around it if rather than if you're passionate about it. Like, it's just easier. It's just better if you're passionate about it. Now, I don't think that's a prerequisite. I agree with the finding 100% that you don't have to be passionate about a topic to make it successful, but it helps.
It does help, but the data is telling us most people are not creating content around their passion. They're just not. So I think that's what a lot of people think, oh my God, I'm not super passionate about this. I mean, I'll be honest with you. Oh my God, people be shocked to hear I'm not super passionate about content marketing. I'm not.
I'd like to see that. I'd like to see that segmented by those who are successful versus those who are struggling at it.
All right. Well, all we're looking at right now is content entrepreneurs who are making
right. Totally get
Got
it.
All right.
Totally get it. But I would hazard a guess. This is just a hypothesis, a gut instinct, that those who take that hockey stick up into success are those who either find interest in it.
It's different. And
I don't mean like
that's different. Finding interest is different than following your passion. Well, I find interest in,
All right. Well,
yes. See, I think that we have to. I think that we're talking about the same thing, Robert. We're just not saying, oh my God, I've had this passion to do this my whole life. And
No, I get that. I get that. I love football, but I would never launch a football podcast because
there you go.
I don't.
Yeah, like
you know
I would say that you're passionate about the Dallas Cowboys, but you know that that's a very tough content model when you got 70,000 other people trying to do it and none of them are successful. It's just too much competition.
That's right. Well, it's the Dallas Cowboys too. I mean, how can people be successful with that? Oh, he went there.
Oh, he did.
Yeah,
he did.
Oh, damn.
That is crazy.
Damn.
So just to finish up this whole thing, we were talking about execution. This is the last part I want to cover, and then you and I can talk a little bit. But the content entrepreneurs are treating it like a business. And when I say treating it like a business, you have to realize that content creation for a content entrepreneur is a very small part overall of what they're doing. Say something between 20 and 30%. I mean, it's still the biggest thing that they do. Yeah. But what are they doing?
That's right.
Marketing, sales, promotion, distribution, managing contractors, managing other people, managing employees. Yep. It is very hard to run a business. So you have to so a lot of people will say, okay, well, there's content creators might not be making a lot of money. There's a lot of them fail. Well, first of all, in general, U.S. small businesses, 20% fail, according to the Small Business Administration. So you've got 20% right off the bat, they're going to fail in the first year. By the end of the fifth year, you've got more than half that are done. And then after 10 years, you've got a third left. That's probably similar to what you're going to see with a content entrepreneur, the same type of thing. And that's why you've got to make sure that you set this up for patience and that it's going to take time. And you have to remember that you look at what metrics are you going to look at if you have the long view. And I think that if I'm looking at this, if I look back and say, okay, I started in 2007, we had a successful exit in 2016. If you'd have said 9 years for a successful exit, I'd have said, I'll take it. Because there's not many businesses that you can get that. There's not many people in general that are able to do that. But if you have that long range outlook and that runway, you can be successful. And that's, I guess, what I'll talk about in the research is it's a business first. We say content entrepreneur, but it's really entrepreneur content. Because first of all, you're running a business.
That's right. Yeah, and we've seen that, by the way. I've done plenty of research into audiences of small businesses where that exact same pattern exists, right? You know, lawyers are a great one. You know, there is a statistic about solopreneur lawyers that I think it's only 30% of them go beyond 18 months. And the reason is because what lawyers, solopreneurs discover is they hang up their own shingle, start their own practice, and then realize that they're not in the business of practicing law. They're actually in the business of marketing and accounting and closing new business and contract management and all the things that they don't like to do, except for, they love to practice law. And so they realize that their bill, and this is a real number, I don't know how current it is, but this is a couple of years old now, that it's 22% of their time is actually spent billable. And for a lawyer, billable time is everything.
Everything, yeah.
And so they realize that if they can only spend 22 to 28%, up to a third of their time being billable, that's not a tenable business for them. And so what do is they discover that about a year or so in, and by 18 months they've quit and gone to join a big firm. And so one of the things that they see is that if they can figure out how to manage that, how to manage the idea of getting marketing going, getting time management better, getting, billable better, getting, solutions in place for them to be able to do that they can up their billable time. And if they can last past 18 months, then they can pretty much do anything they want at that point.
Yeah, I think that and I've talked to a ton of content entrepreneurs out there, and they really do think that most of their time is spent on social media and creating all this content and repurposing all this content. And yes, it does take some time, but about 30% of your time. Honestly, if you're doing it right.
That's right.
If you're spending all your time on just the content creation stuff, you're probably not doing the marketing stuff that you're supposed to be doing, or you're probably not thinking about the product that you'll ultimately launch, or you're not thinking about how do you handle the contractor agreements in the right way so that, both sides are happy and you could have a functioning business. So, yeah, I mean, wrapping this up, you don't need to be in the most popular industry. You just need what we call a content tilt, right? We talk about it all the time. You need a fresh take on your niche. You need entertaining and engaging content. It doesn't have to be necessarily pretty. It just has to be good and consistent. You have to have this adequate runway, and you have to know that this is hard work every day. And you got to get up and do this thing and make it go. We did some findings on what they make, and on average, a full-time creator is generating over $100,000 in revenue. That's full-time. That's average. The median revenue level, which is probably the more accurate one, is $50,000. What's interesting, Robert, is, by the way, that's revenue. That's not profit.
That's right.
So that's very important. And there's costs associated with that. Now, what's funny is, what's interesting is most of the creators that we talk to, they don't want to be millionaires necessarily. They don't say they have to be millionaires. They say they'd like to earn about 50% more than what they're getting right now, and they would be happy. The most important thing is, in this whole thing, Robert, is they don't want to work for somebody else ever again. Yeah. That's really fiercely independent. And that's why
I could absolutely imagine that.
Yeah, once you get to, and you're trying to get to revenue quickly enough, because once you get that taste of revenue and you say, oh, I can actually do this thing, you're like, I'm never going back. So it's really interesting.
Did you segment them does the research segment them out by people who are full-time at this versus part-time at this?
Yes, absolutely. We've got a side hustle, part-time versus full-time. So I'm only talking about the full-time.
Yeah, gotcha. So that's the real key, right? Because I'm sure it's a evolution for most people, right? That they don't start out full-time. Very few. What
we call the side hustle.
I'm sure there are some. Yeah, exactly.
And the whole key is how do we get you full-time as quickly as possible? Because with part-time, you're in trouble. You're in trouble in a number of ways. First of all, you're delaying your time. You're going to absolutely need more runway if you go part-time. The other thing is other opportunities happen. You might say, oh, okay, I'm going to go back to work for somebody, or I got this job offer. Like, you really have to get to commitment as soon as possible. So that's why when I talk to somebody and they're, if I'm doing a little consulting or a little mentorship and they're like, here's where I'm at, whatever, the first thing I have to say is you have to figure out a way that you get to this thing and do this full time as quickly as possible. And I get that's difficult in a lot of situations. You've got a family to take care of. Maybe the opportunity's not there yet, but you have to set the plan to get there as quickly as possible. You cannot be a part-time creator, in my opinion. At 99.9% of the time, you will not be successful as a part-time creator. You've got to get the full-time.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
Yep. I think that's right. And a lot of that has to do with what we just talked about, which is that there are other tasks other than content creation, involved, right? There's marketing, there's, audience development, there's technology work that you have to do, there's, sales, there's contracts, there's accounting. So it's not just measuring how much time you're spending creating content, it's measuring how much time you're spending doing the whole business.
Well, it's interesting. I think about the early days of Content Marketing Institute. I probably spent the majority of my time as a percentage building relationships with other people and doing so online, building influencer programs, getting people to guest post on the site, going to events and networking. I mean, because Content Marketing Institute is not one person. It was many, many people that brought that. There was a whole community that made that thing work. And so a lot of that work was bringing that community together, which is the same thing we're trying to do with CEX. So it's not rocket science. It just takes a lot of time. So anyways, that's the kind of the overview. I'm going to be sharing that in my keynote, a much briefer version because I have 10 minutes to kick this thing off before Roberto Blake goes, and who's fantastic. And then, of course, Ann Hanley is going on after, or already did by the time people listen to this. But any overall things that you want to share from those findings, if you will?
I would say it ties in very nicely with the presentation that I'll be giving, which is all on audience building and sort of the economics behind knowing your audience and why that's such an important thing. And then I offer up a process for how a content entrepreneur can research their audience and really understand from a business opportunity what it represents. And as I say, I mean, this goes right into what we were just talking about. But one of my main points is that independent of how much success you have, when you have success, like when you hit that pivot point, and so many, for so many content creators, it's not like a slow burn over, 7 years, right? You have that year, or you have that quarter, or you have that where you hit, right? You strike a match and you start to burn. And you could even see that with Content Marketing Institute as well, right? I mean, it was slow going in the first year, the first couple of years, and then it hit, right? Arguably for the event, it was a very successful year one, but then years, probably 3 was probably my sort of estimation of when things really pivoted, sure. Right? Really sort of went, hockey stick from there. And, that's when we hit the fastest growing company and all those kinds of things. And it's the same for most content creators, I find. But what happens is that you either will go find out your audience and what they want and what they need and who they are and what the opportunity is and when you should start to pivot into other revenue models, or someone will do it for you. And one of the things that I talk about is when someone goes out and does it for you. For example, if you want venture funding, or if somebody comes in and says, "Hey, I want to buy you," or if someone comes in and says, "Hey, I want to be your exclusive sponsor," all of those big questions where you all of a sudden go, "Wow, it's about to get real from a revenue perspective." The first question is going to be, "Can we talk?" And the second question is going to be, "Tell me about your audience."
Yep.
And if you don't know the answer to that, they'll say fine, but then they're going to go find out. And you can either do that work, or you can have someone do it for you. And I'm just going to make the argument in my presentation that it's way better if you do it. It's just way, way better if you do it, because then you're going to have much better answers to all the follow-up questions. What's your monetization plan? How are you going to phase in subscription versus advertising? Where are you on influencer marketing? Where are you on content marketing? Where are you on growing your audience into something that is meaningful and revenue generating? Where are all of those questions that are going to come along with that little pivot point of success are so much easier to answer when you know your audience. And so the real focus of my talk is going to feed right off of what you were just saying with the research, which is you got to know your business. You got to know why you're in business and who you're in business for, because if you don't, you'll end up running into so many other dead ends.
It's the business part. Don't forget you're not doing this to build fame. This is not an influencer
That's right.
model.
Well, you may be. You might be into that just to build fame, but
that could be your goal. It's just not a sustainable business necessarily.
It's not. That's right. That's fleeting. Right. And that's fleeting. I mean, one of these, just spoiler alert, because it will have already happened by the time this airs. So one of the examples I use, and this is a fascinating thing, I don't know if you even knew this. I was doing a lot of research into Netflix. So tell me what you think the most successful series on Netflix has been over the last, let's call it 8 years, right? Since they've really started into original programming. What's their biggest hit?
Well, I thought it was. Well, I would have said at one time Stranger Things, but what was the Korean show that was just out? The
Squid Game.
Squid Game.
Yeah,
I would say Squid Game.
Yep.
Yeah.
So here's fun fact. The way Netflix measures success is in the number of hours consumed in the first month, which tells you a lot of things about Netflix, by the way.
Wow.
In terms of the way that they measure value, because they only care about the first month of a show. Really, that's all clearly it's where they make their money back or not, because it's all about how many new people did they get to subscribe to the service. And so I think that'll change, by the way, now that they've sort of had this major sort of challenge. However, if you look at the top 10, and Variety did a whole research, and I'm going to show this in my talk, and it's fascinating. Daily Variety did a custom research project where they looked at the number of hours, the top 10 shows across the last few years. Squid Game is number 1 for the number of hours consumed in the first month. But basically, if you look at it after that, 70% of all Squid Game watches or hours spent with the show came in the first month. In other words, a whole bunch of people didn't finish Squid Game. Basically, they watched the first 2 episodes and then quit it, and then basically went away. And so you say, is that a success? Is that really a hit? Is that a long-term business model? So you would argue, I would argue, that Squid Game is not necessarily a long-term business model for a content platform, for a content creator. Switching out players and shows for Netflix, it might be a great strategy. But for the content creator of Squid Game, having 70% of your views come in the first 2 episodes that's not good. That means we were really good at getting them there and really bad at holding them. And so if you look at the others, there are the varying degrees of that, the big hits on Netflix. And so Netflix is not great at keeping viewers on their series for any length of time, save for one. And the one that is entering its 8th season, and it's the only series, by the way, that has had 8 seasons on Netflix. 7 seasons and they're in their 7th season now, is Grayson Frankie, which you don't watch, I don't watch, nobody I know really watches. But from the very beginning, they have gotten an audience, never hit the top 10, never hit sort of a viral moment. But for 8 seasons, 8 years, basically, they have kept the audience that they have and have become one of, if not the most successful shows for Netflix in the process, because they kept an audience entertained and engaged for 8 years. That's what we're trying for. It is not about going viral in month 1. It is about keeping someone for 8 years.
That is a great example. I'm definitely going to steal that example.
Yeah,
and give you no credit.
Come to my presentation.
Is that in your presentation, Grayson Frankie?
It is indeed in my presentation.
I won't steal it.
They know their audience. They know you don't know their audience. I don't know their audience. I don't. But they know their audience so well and have kept that. There's another one, which is another one that has kept on that actually is in the top 10, which again I didn't know about, but it's this Who Killed Sarah?
Yeah, I don't know that either.
Which is It's a Mexican series, very shot in the very telenovela way, but they're on their 3rd season, I think, and their views are almost equal in month 1, month 2, and month 3 of any of their given seasons. And so they basically keep people hooked. They keep people hooked in, and once you're in, that kind of thing.
That's amazing. So, all right, well. Yeah. I guess I just to wrap this up, I would tell everyone that if you want to get the research is going to be out in about a month. So if you want to make sure you get the research for free, just go to thetilt.com and you can subscribe to that, thetilt.com, and you'll get the notifications on the research. But I'm looking forward to seeing you. Hopefully by this time that people hear this, it was a success. Nobody were seriously injured.
Oh my gosh! Is that the bar? Is that the bar we're going for there? Is it that nobody was seriously injured?
You know what?
I mean,
it's interesting.
When you got me there, I mean, with as much drinking as we'll do, I mean, I suppose that is a risk.
I've been to a lot of first year events, and you feel a vibe right away, right? You're like, what's the vibe? I'm interested to feel and to see what the vibe of this event is going to be.
I can't wait. Yeah, I can't wait.
Hopefully, it's one of those where I'm really liking this vibe, and I want to make sure that I keep coming back.
Oh, and there's so many cool people that are going to be there too. I mean, Jeremiah Oyang is going to be there, and Ann is going to be there, and there's just I'm going to get to see some old friends. It's just going to be awesome.
A little family reunion. So there you go. Well, awesome. That's it. That's all I got.
Yep, absolutely. All right. Well, let's cut this then, and let's say that we'll be back with our regular news and snarkiness next week. But in the meantime, if you want to get all the goodness of any of this podcast show notes, which this episode will have none of, by the way, we'll dive into any of the other 321 episodes that you might dive into, because they do have plenty of show notes. And subscribe. Won't you get a subscription going if you haven't already? Tell a friend if you haven't already. Give us a rating if you haven't already. And most importantly, get on over to Twitter, hashtag us up with This Old Marketing to give us story ideas, because we need those story ideas for the news. It helps us build the news, and it helps us build a better show for you. And you get a shout out on the actual show itself. But until we meet again next week, just remember, it's your story to tell. Tell it well. We'll see you next week on This Old Marketing.